Maya grew up in a small, noisy neighborhood where the streets were crowded with children playing soccer, women gossiping on balconies, and old men sipping tea under trees. Her family lived in a modest apartment with peeling paint and creaky floors. To everyone in the area, Maya was simply the taxi driver's daughter. Her father, Daniel, was known for his kind smile and worn-out yellow taxi. He drove every day from sunrise until midnight, barely resting, picking up passengers from the airport, bus stations, and busy city streets. People respected him as hardworking but pitied him, too, because his old taxi often broke down and his clothes were always the same, faded shirts and scuffed shoes. Children at Maya's school sometimes mocked her. "Your father smells like gasoline," they teased. Others laughed at her when she brought homemade sandwiches instead of buying fast food. Maya kept her head down, studying hard, while inside she wished for a better life. She dreamed of living in a house with a garden, having new clothes, and not worrying about money every day. Despite their struggles, Maya loved her father deeply. Daniel never raised his voice. He listened to her dreams and told her, "Maya, you are destined for something greater. Don't let anyone make you feel small." But there was something odd about him. Every so often, Maya noticed her father staring into space, lost in thought, as if carrying a secret too heavy to share. Sometimes he would disappear for a whole day, claiming he had a special job, but he never explained what it was. At night, she sometimes heard him talking quietly on the phone in a language she didn't understand. Her mother had passed away years earlier, so it was just the two of them. Maya trusted her father, but curiosity gnawed at her. Why did he work so hard yet never seem truly worried about money? Why did he sometimes return home with expensive-looking watches or crisp new bills that he quickly hid in an old wooden box under the bed? One evening, after a long day of school, Maya asked him directly, "Papa, are we poor?" Daniel chuckled, brushing her hair from her face. "Poor? My daughter, wealth is not about how big your house is or how shiny your car looks. Wealth is about freedom, and one day you'll see we are not as poor as you think." His words confused her, but she didn't push further. As Maya grew older, her father's behavior became stranger. On her 16th birthday, he handed her an envelope. Inside was a scholarship acceptance letter to the most prestigious private school in the country. Maya was shocked. "But Papa, how? This school is for rich families. We can't afford it." Daniel only smiled. "I told you, Maya, you are meant for something greater. Don't ask too many questions now. Just study, learn, and watch carefully. The world is not what it seems." When Maya began attending the new school, she immediately felt out of place. Students arrived in luxury cars, carrying the latest gadgets, wearing designer clothes. She arrived in her father's battered taxi, and classmates laughed at her. "A taxi girl in our school? What a joke." The humiliation burned her, but Maya refused to give up. She studied harder, determined to prove herself. What kept her going was her father's mysterious confidence. He never seemed afraid of the rich families who looked down on him. In fact, when he dropped her off at school one day, she noticed something shocking. One of the richest businessmen in the country bowed slightly and shook Daniel's hand with respect. Maya's jaw dropped. She asked her father later, "Papa, how does that man know you? He's on TV all the time." Daniel simply said, "The world is smaller than you think, Maya. Don't worry about him." But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her father was living two lives. One as a simple taxi driver, humble and ordinary, and another, hidden from her, where powerful men respected him, where secrets were locked away in his old wooden box, and where the truth about their family lay waiting. Late one night, unable to sleep, Maya crept into her father's room. She pulled out the wooden box from under his bed. Inside, beneath stacks of crisp bills, she found documents, land deeds, business shares, and even letters signed by top politicians. Her heart pounded. What was her father hiding? Before she could read more, Daniel appeared in the doorway. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with seriousness. "Maya," he said softly, "it's time you learned the truth, but once you know, nothing will ever be the same." Maya froze, clutching the papers in her hands. She looked at her father, the man she thought was just a taxi driver, and suddenly realized her life was about to change forever. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she held the papers. Her father's calm face only deepened the storm inside her. For years, she had believed he was just an ordinary taxi driver, struggling to pay bills, living paycheck to paycheck. But the documents told a different story: shares in massive companies, land titles for properties across the country, and letters signed by government officials. "Papa," Maya whispered, her voice cracking, "what is all this? How can a taxi driver own half the country?" Daniel sighed deeply and sat beside her. His shoulders were broad but tired, the kind of tired that came from carrying heavy secrets for too long. "Maya," he said softly, "I am not who people think I am. For many years, I've hidden my true identity, not from the world, but from you, because I wanted you to grow up strong, humble, and kind. If you had known the truth too early, it might have destroyed you." Maya's mind spun spun. The truth, what truth? Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. I am one of the wealthiest men in this country. Every business you see, the banks, the factories, even the schools, many of them are under my name. But I live as a taxi driver because I chose it. Because I wanted to escape the corruption, the greed, the people who would have poisoned your childhood if they knew who you were. Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. You mean, all those years we lived simply, all the times I was bullied for being poor, you could have stopped it. You could have given me everything. Her father nodded slowly. Yes, but if I had given you everything, would you be the Maya I see today? Strong, hardworking, resilient? Or would you be like the spoiled children you see at your school, lost in luxury, blind to suffering, ungrateful for life itself? Maya's anger clashed with confusion. She remembered every time she had been mocked, every tear she cried wishing she was rich. But why didn't you tell me? Why hide it so completely? Daniel's gaze hardened. Because secrets can protect lives. I made enemies, Maya, powerful enemies. If they knew about you, if they knew I had an heir, they would have used you against me. That's why I lived as a taxi driver. It was the perfect disguise. Everyone looked down on me and no one suspected who I truly was. The room fell silent except for the sound of Maya's racing heart. Suddenly, the world she knew crumbled around her. Her father wasn't just her father. He was someone much bigger, someone people bowed to, someone who controlled wealth beyond imagination. But Papa, she whispered, if all this is true, why now? Why are you telling me this? Daniel's eyes softened. Because you're old enough to know and because time is running out. My enemies are getting closer. Soon, I won't be able to protect you just by hiding. You must know who you are. You must be ready. Maya stared at him, her throat dry. Ready for what? Her father took her hand and pressed it firmly. Ready to inherit everything. Ready to stand where I stood. Ready to fight battles you don't even know exist. Maya's chest tightened. The word inherit echoed in her mind. She thought of the rich students at her school, the glamorous lives of people on television. She had always dreamed of being like them. But now that the possibility was real, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a storm about to swallow her whole. She shook her head. No, Papa, I don't want this. I just want a normal life. Daniel smiled sadly. That's exactly why you are worthy. Those who desire power are often the ones who abuse it. Those who fear it, like you, are the ones who can carry it wisely. At that moment, Maya realized the life she had known was gone. She wasn't just the taxi driver's daughter anymore. She was the daughter of the richest man in the country, a man who had chosen to hide his empire beneath grease-stained shirts and an old yellow taxi. But as she looked at the papers in her hand, a cold thought crept into her mind. If her father had enemies, and if those enemies were getting closer, then her life was about to become far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. Her father stood, placing the wooden box back under the bed. Maya, promise me something, he said. What? She whispered. Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll stay strong. Because soon the world will know who you really are. And once that happens, there is no going back. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She wanted to protest, to run away from this heavy truth, but deep inside she knew her life had already changed forever. And somewhere in the shadows, she sensed, those enemies her father spoke of were already watching. The next few days felt unreal for Maya. She went to school as usual, riding in her father's battered yellow taxi. But every time she looked at him, she no longer saw a simple driver. She saw the richest man in the country, a man hiding his wealth beneath worn clothes and calloused hands. At school, the insults continued. Hey, taxi girl, need me to lend you some money for lunch? One of her classmates sneered. Normally, Maya would stay quiet, swallow the pain, and pretend not to hear. But now she saw them differently. They were children of wealthy families who thought they owned the world. Yet her father, the man they mocked, could buy and sell everything their families owned. Still, she kept her silence. Her father's words echoed in her head. Stay humble, stay hidden. But the silence didn't last. One afternoon, as Daniel was driving her home, Maya noticed a black SUV following them. Its tinted windows gave nothing away, but it stayed close behind, turning wherever they turned. Her heart raced. Papa, she whispered, someone's following us. Daniel's eyes flicked to the mirror, but he didn't panic. He simply pressed the accelerator, weaving through the traffic with the skill of someone who knew every street by heart. After a few sharp turns, the SUV disappeared. Who were they? Maya asked, her voice shaking. Her father tightened his grip on the steering wheel. My enemies. They're watching us now. You see, Maya, when you have as much as I do, there are always those who want to take it away. And when they can't reach me, they'll try to reach you. Maya's stomach turned cold. She had never imagined her life could be in danger. She thought her father's secret was only about wealth, but now she understood it was about survival. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind full of questions. Why had her father chosen her to inherit his empire? Why not leave it hidden forever? And most importantly, how was she supposed to face enemies she couldn't even see? The next day, her questions grew heavier. She returned from school to find her father speaking with two men in suits. They looked powerful, dangerous even. One had a scar across his cheek. The other wore dark glasses even indoors. They stopped talking the moment they saw her. "Who are they?" Maya asked cautiously. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Allies," he said, "but not the kind you can trust completely." The man with the scar smiled thinly. "She's grown, Daniel. Maybe it's time she knows the cost of being your daughter." Maya shivered under his gaze. She sensed he was more than just an ally, he was a warning. After they left, Maya turned to her father. "Papa, what's happening? Why are people watching us? Why do you meet men like them?" Daniel sat heavily in his chair, his face shadowed. "Because wealth attracts danger. These men, some are partners, others are rivals. But in my world, partners can turn into enemies overnight. That's why I kept you hidden. But now, Maya, hiding won't work anymore. They know about you." Maya felt the ground slip beneath her feet. "Then what do we do?" Her father's eyes softened. "We prepare. You must learn everything: business, politics, strategy. You must see the world not as a child, but as someone who may one day lead it." Maya wanted to protest, to say she was too young, too unprepared, but the memory of the black SUV silenced her. If danger had already arrived, ignorance could only make her weaker. The following week, her life transformed. Instead of evenings spent on homework and television, Maya now spent nights in her father's study, learning about the empire he had built. He showed her maps of land, charts of companies, and files of names, people who owed him favors, people who wanted him gone. "Power is not about money, Maya," he told her one night. "It's about control. The money is just a tool. The real question is, can you control yourself when the world bows before you?" His words scared her more than the enemies. She thought of her classmates, the spoiled children with everything at their fingertips. Could she really be different if all this wealth became hers? But before she could answer that question, the enemies made their first move. One evening, as Maya left her new school, she noticed the same black SUV parked near the gate. This time, it didn't just follow her, it blocked the road. Two men stepped out, their eyes cold. "Maya, right?" one of them said with a smirk. "Your father thinks he can hide forever, but we know the truth. If he doesn't want trouble, he should hand over what belongs to us." Maya's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs froze. Just then, another taxi screeched to a halt beside her. The door flung open and Daniel shouted, "Maya, get in." She dove inside, and the taxi sped away as the men cursed behind them. Daniel's face was grim as he drove. "They're coming faster than I expected," he muttered. "It's starting, Maya, and once it starts, it doesn't stop until someone wins." Maya clutched the seat, her fear turning into determination. She had wanted a normal life, but that was no longer possible. The truth was out, and the enemies were closing in. Her father had built an empire in silence. Now she realized the silence was breaking. And whether she liked it or not, she was part of the war that was coming. The night after the black SUV blocked Maya, she couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the window felt like a threat, every shadow like a pair of watching eyes. For the first time, she understood her father's warnings. This wasn't just about money or business. It was about survival. Daniel noticed her fear but didn't comfort her with false promises. Instead, he said, "Maya, fear is natural, but you must learn to master it. If you let it control you, they've already won." The very next morning, her life changed again. Daniel took her not to school, but to a massive building on the edge of the city. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary warehouse, but inside was a secret training ground. There were classrooms, gyms, even mock offices filled with files and computers. "This is where I've prepared for years," Daniel explained. "And now you will too." Maya stared in disbelief. "Prepare for what?" "For the life you've inherited," her father said firmly. "If my enemies want a war, you must be ready. Knowledge is your weapon. Discipline is your armor." The training began immediately. Each day, Maya was pushed beyond her limits. In the mornings, she studied business law, finance, and economics under experts her father had secretly hired. They taught her how to read balance sheets, how to spot corruption, and how to negotiate without ever raising her voice. In the afternoons, she learned languages: French, Mandarin, Arabic, because her father said power had no borders. She struggled at first, but slowly realized she had a sharp memory, and the challenge lit a fire inside her. Evenings were spent in the gym. Daniel insisted she learn self-defense. "If they come for you," he said, "you must know how to fight back, not just with your mind, but with your body." At first, Maya hated it. Her arms ached, her legs shook, and she cried in frustration when she fell again and again on the mat. But Daniel never scolded her. He only said, "Strength comes from pain. Every bruise is proof you're harder to break." Over time, Maya's body grew stronger, her confidence sharper. She began to notice changes in herself, how she could predict her opponent's next move, how she could control her breath under pressure, how she could keep her face calm even when her heart raced. But the hardest lessons weren't physical, they were about trust. One evening, Daniel placed a file in front of her. Inside was a list of names, businessmen, politicians, even family friends. Some had helped her father, Others had betrayed him. "Look carefully," he said. "In this world, loyalty is rare. People will smile at you while sharpening a knife for your back. You must learn to see through them." Maya studied the faces, reading the notes about who had switched sides during crises, who had sold information for money, who had risked everything to protect Daniel. It was terrifying to realize how many people lived double lives, how even allies could be enemies tomorrow. One night while reviewing files, Maya asked, "Papa, do you ever get tired of living like this? Always watching, always suspecting." Daniel's eyes grew distant. "Every day, but power doesn't forgive mistakes. The moment you relax, someone else takes everything. That's why I wanted to keep you away from it, but fate has chosen otherwise." The weeks turned into months, and Maya became sharper, faster, stronger. Her classmates at school noticed the difference. She carried herself with confidence, no longer flinching at their mockery. When they laughed at her father's taxi, she simply smiled, knowing secrets they could never imagine. But the enemies hadn't disappeared. The black SUV appeared now and then, watching from a distance. Strange calls came at night, voices whispering threats. Once their apartment door was scratched with a single word, "Soon." Daniel told her, "This is their way of testing you. They want to see if fear will make us weak." Instead of breaking, Maya grew more determined. The training had given her something new: resilience. She no longer wanted to run away from her father's world. She wanted to face it. One evening, after an exhausting day, Daniel sat across from her and said, "It's time for your first test." Maya frowned. "Test? There's a company, one of mine, that's under attack. Rivals are trying to steal it through legal tricks. Tomorrow you will attend the meeting in my place. You will listen, you will speak, and you will decide. It's not just about business. It's about proving to them that you are ready." Maya's heart pounded. "Me, but I'm not." Her father cut her off. "You are my daughter, and one day everything I've built will rest on your shoulders. If you cannot face a room of liars and thieves, how will you face the empire?" Maya swallowed hard. She had spent months preparing, but this was different. This was real. The world outside would finally see her not as a taxi driver's daughter, but as someone who carried power. That night, she barely slept. She kept rehearsing what she would say, how she would sit, how she would hide her fear. When dawn arrived, Daniel handed her a simple black suit. "Power is not about what you wear," he said, "but the world will always look at appearances first. Wear this, walk tall, and remember, silence can sometimes speak louder than words." Maya dressed, her hands trembling. In the mirror, she no longer saw a scared schoolgirl. She saw a young woman standing at the edge of destiny. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maya, today you step into my world. Be ready, the wolves are waiting." And with that, the taxi driver's daughter was about to face her first battle as the hidden heiress of an empire. The conference room smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne. Men in tailored suits sat around the long glass table, their eyes sharp, their smiles sharper. They whispered among themselves until Maya walked in, her black suit crisp, her steps steady even though her heart thundered. For a moment, the room fell silent. She was young, too young for this setting, and several of the men exchanged amused glances. One leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Where is Daniel? Has he sent his daughter to do his work now?" Maya straightened her back, remembering her father's advice. Silence can be power. She took her seat at the head of the table without saying a word. The men's laughter rippled uneasily. She laid the folder Daniel had given her on the table and looked each of them in the eye, one by one. The smirking man cleared his throat. "This is a waste of time. We are discussing serious business. Children should not." "Continue," Maya interrupted, her voice calm but firm. The room froze. The man blinked, caught off guard. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The authority in her tone echoed her father's, and for the first time, the men shifted in their seats uncomfortably. One of the older men adjusted his glasses. "The matter is simple. The company Daniel owns is collapsing. We propose to buy controlling shares at a fair price before it loses all value." Maya opened the folder, revealing documents her father had prepared. "The company is not collapsing. Production has increased by 20% this quarter. Demand is rising. What you call rescue is theft, and theft will not be tolerated." Her words cut through the room like a blade. The men exchanged uneasy looks. Some shuffled papers, others frowned. The smirking man leaned forward. "And what will you do, little girl, if we go ahead without your consent?" Maya met his gaze without flinching. "Then you will regret it, because the contracts you've already signed with us can be canceled. Every loan, every deal, every partnership you rely on, we control more than you realize. Push further and you won't be stealing a company. You'll be losing your empires." The silence that followed was heavy. Maya could feel her pulse racing, her palms sweating under the table, but she kept her expression calm. She had rehearsed this with her father 100 times. The words weren't just hers. They were backed by years of Daniel's power. Finally, the older man with glasses sighed. "She speaks with her father's blood. Very well. The proposal is withdrawn. The meeting ended quickly after that. One by one, the men left, their arrogance dimmed. But as they walked out, Maya noticed the smirking man pause at the door. He turned back, his eyes cold. "You may think you've won today," he said softly, "but wars are not won in one battle. Remember that, girl." When he was gone, Maya exhaled, her whole body trembling. She had done it. She had faced them. She had survived. Her father was waiting outside. The moment she stepped out, he smiled proudly. "You held the room," he said. "I watched from the camera feed. You didn't flinch." Maya nearly collapsed into his arms. "Papa, I was terrified." Daniel hugged her tightly. "Courage is not the absence of fear, Maya. It is doing what you must, even when fear is heavy in your chest. Today, you proved you are ready." But deep inside, Maya wasn't sure she was ready. The smirking man's words haunted her. Wars are not won in one battle. She knew he was right. The enemies would not stop. If anything, they would strike harder now that they saw Daniel's daughter stepping into his world. That night, as she lay in bed, Maya replayed the meeting in her mind. The way the men looked at her, the power in her words, the silence that followed, she realized she had changed. She was no longer invisible, no longer the bullied girl hiding her shame. She had spoken, and the world had listened. But change came with a price. The whispers of danger grew louder. Twice that week, she noticed the black SUV again, once outside her school, once near the training warehouse. And one evening, a note slipped under their apartment door. "You are your father's weakness, and weaknesses are meant to be broken." Maya's hands shook as she read it. She showed it to her father, expecting anger, but Daniel only nodded grimly. "They are testing us, but they don't understand. You are not my weakness, Maya. You are my strength." His words gave her courage, but she couldn't shake the fear that something bigger was coming. The very next day, her fear became real. Daniel came home late, his face bruised, his shirt torn. Maya rushed to him in panic. "Papa, what happened?" Daniel winced but smiled faintly. "They tried to send me a message, but I sent one back." Maya's chest tightened. The war her father had warned her about wasn't just approaching, it had already begun. And whether she liked it or not, she was standing in the center of it. The attack came without warning. It was a rainy night when Maya woke to the sound of breaking glass. Shouts filled the small apartment. Masked men stormed in, their boots pounding against the floor. Daniel rushed into her room, pulling her by the hand. "Maya, stay behind me." Her heart raced as chaos erupted. The men weren't thieves, they were here for her father, and maybe for her. She remembered the warning, "You are your father's weakness." Daniel fought fiercely, his years of training and discipline giving him strength, but they were many. He shouted, "Run, Maya," but Maya didn't move. She grabbed the small wooden stick from her bedside, the one she had practiced with, and swung it at one of the attackers. Her arms trembled, but she didn't back down. The fight ended when sirens blared outside. The masked men scattered, disappearing into the night. The neighbors had called the police. By the time officers arrived, Daniel was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but alive. Maya knelt beside him, tears streaming. "Papa, why won't they stop?" Daniel held her hand. "Because the truth is out, Maya. They know who you are now, and once the wolves see a challenger, they will never stop chasing." The next morning, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. "We can't hide anymore," he said. "It's time the world knows the truth." Maya's stomach tightened. "The truth, you mean?" "Yes," Daniel said. "That I am not just a taxi driver, that I built an empire, that you, my daughter, are the heir to it." And so, for the first time, Maya was taken to the heart of her father's secret life. Not the training warehouse, not the small offices, but the real headquarters. It was a towering skyscraper in the center of the city, its glass windows gleaming like diamonds. To everyone else, it was owned by a faceless corporation. But Daniel walked inside with authority, and suddenly, doors opened, employees bowed, and whispers filled the air. "The boss is here." Maya could barely believe it. Hundreds of people worked under her father's command, executives, lawyers, strategists, guards. Every floor hummed with activity, and all this power was his. Daniel led her to the top floor into a vast office that overlooked the city. "Maya," he said, "this is what I've kept from you. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted you to have a simple childhood. But now, it's time you know everything." He explained how, years ago, he had started with nothing but a single car. He drove day and night, saving every coin. But unlike others, he invested, buying small properties, then businesses, then entire industries. He kept his identity hidden behind layers of companies, appearing to the world as nothing more than a hardworking taxi driver. "I lived 2 lives," Daniel said. "One in the daylight, one in the shadows. And all of it was for you, so that when the time came, you would never have to beg, never have to bow, never have to feel small." Maya's eyes filled with tears. All those years she had been ashamed. All those years she had defended her father from cruel words. She never knew he carried the weight of an empire. But the revelation also brought fear. "Papa, if the world knows, won't they come harder for us?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, which is why you must stand with me now. Together we will face them, and one day you will lead after me." The days that followed were like stepping into a new universe. Maya no longer took the bus to school. She was escorted by cars, surrounded by security. Newspapers began whispering about Daniel's fortune, about the mysterious daughter suddenly seen by his side. The same classmates who mocked her now stared in shock, whispering behind their hands. But Maya did not seek revenge. She had grown beyond their shallow words. Instead, she walked with her head high, not because of her father's wealth, but because she now understood her own worth. The enemies did strike again, trying to sabotage businesses, spreading lies in the media, even bribing officials. But this time, Maya was ready. She used her training, her sharp mind, and her courage to confront them in meetings, in courts, in negotiations. The men who once smirked at her now listened when she spoke. They realized the girl they thought was weak had become a force they could not bend. One evening after a long day, Maya and Daniel stood together at the top of the skyscraper, watching the city lights. "Papa," she said softly, "I used to wish we were like everyone else. Normal, simple, but now I see maybe this was always meant to be." Daniel smiled, placing his arm around her. "You were born for this, Maya, not because of my money, not because of my empire, but because you have the strength to lead, the courage to fight, and the heart to never forget where you came from." The rain that had once terrified her now felt like music against the glass. Maya knew the battles were not over. Enemies would always exist, but she also knew something far greater. She was no longer the girl mocked for her father's job. She was the daughter of the richest man in the country, and one day soon she would be more than that. She would be his legacy.